There comes a moment when you stop trying to make sense of it, and you just feel it. That strange heaviness in your chest, that quiet tension in people's words, a feeling you can't shake, like someone's hiding something, like any minute now, something will come to light, and it's going to hurt. Sometimes it feels like the world is secretly against you, like they smile to your face, but inside, they're planning your fall. You try to tell yourself you're overthinking, but your body doesn't lie. It stays tight, guarded, always bracing for the worst. The truth is, feeling like this wears you down. It drains you, because it's like you can never fully relax, never truly trust. Like at any moment, someone might betray you again, even if you're not sure it really happened the first time. But what if this constant feeling isn't just about them? What if it's a mirror of some old wound that never healed? Maybe back then, someone really did betray you. Maybe someone who was supposed to protect you. Or maybe it was you, betraying yourself, staying silent just to keep someone's love. And now, every small gesture echoes that buried pain. Every quiet moment feels like abandonment. Every distraction feels like proof they're turning on you. But maybe the worst part isn't what they do. It's what you feel and pretend not to feel. It's what you want to say and don't. It's that fear of facing what you buried deep down. Like finding out the truth about yourself would hurt more than being betrayed again. But I get it. Because sometimes the betrayal that cuts the deepest is when you leave yourself behind just to be accepted. Hi, I'm Noah. This video isn't some big Hollywood production. It's just a way I found to share with you what I learned about myself today through what I've been learning from Carl Jung. Because maybe the moment I'm living through feels a lot like something you're living too. So if something I say here helps you feel a little less alone, just give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, YouTube understands that this kind of content matters to you, and it'll start showing you more of it. Some days, it feels like the whole world is against you. There's no proof, no clear reason, but your body knows. Your chest tightens, your breath gets stuck, and every word from someone else sounds like it's hiding a lie. And you wonder, am I just being paranoid? But it's not madness. It's just your soul on alert. A part of you learned that trusting is dangerous, and ever since then, it's been scanning every moment for betrayal, even when it's not there. The world stopped being neutral. It turned into a minefield, where even silence feels like a warning sign. This kind of fear doesn't start now. It lives in some old place, in a moment of emptiness you didn't understand, in a love you waited for that never came. Your psyche, trying to protect you, built an invisible defense system, an inner filter that turns closeness into risk. But this filter doesn't show the truth. It shows the wound. That's why what you see in others is often a projection. The old pain slips into the present. Suddenly, a simple word feels like a threat. A neutral glance feels like rejection. A normal gesture turns into a red flag. It's hard to trust when you've been trained to survive. The heart starts wearing armor, and any attempt at affection feels like a trap. You shut down, not because you don't want love, but because the fear of getting hurt again feels bigger than the desire to open up. And this is where shadow work begins. Not by blaming the world, but by listening to what's echoing inside. Because this fear that feels so real right now might just be the sound of an old pain that was never heard. There's a part of you that's still scared, a part that believes if it lets go, it'll be betrayed. That part doesn't need fixing. It needs tenderness. It needs you to say, gently, that today is a different day, that the past doesn't have to choose what you feel now. That being afraid isn't weakness, it's just an old way of staying safe. And maybe now, it's time to try a different path. But building this new path doesn't mean erasing the old one. It means looking at it with care and saying, I know why you were afraid. I get why you protected yourself. But now, we can walk another way. Slowly, carefully, not forcing trust, but not running away either. Because when we start to see this distrust as an echo, not the present itself, something inside us starts to calm down. And maybe, just maybe, the world starts to feel less dangerous too. This echo of betrayal isn't your failure. It's a call to be heard, a whisper from the hidden parts of yourself, the ones that once hid away just to avoid breaking again. And now, all they want to know is if you're still here, if you can see that beneath the fear, there's still someone inside you who wants to trust. There are wounds we can't remember with our minds, but our bodies never forgot. The way you shrink back when someone gets too close, the way you try to please just to not be left behind, the fear that rises when someone says they care about you. All of that is memory, not the kind with pictures, but the kind buried in your cells, in your reactions, in how you exist in the world. Some part of you learned early that trusting leads to pain, and since then, your soul has walked slowly, quietly, like someone afraid of waking the same pain all over again. Maybe no one ever yelled at you. Maybe there wasn't a big tragedy. But sometimes, it's the silence that leaves the deepest cracks. The absence of presence, the absence of listening, the absence of a gaze that said, "I see you." These quiet absences can fracture the foundation of trust. And even if you kept going with life, part of you stayed there, still wondering why love always seemed to require that you become someone else. The collective unconscious holds these stories repeated in so many childhoods. The child who had to grow up too soon, the boy who wasn't allowed to cry, the girl who had to be perfect to earn affection. These experiences form complexes, emotional knots that stay alive inside us long after time has passed. That's why sometimes you feel like you're overreacting. But really, it's just the younger part of you asking to be remembered. When you're afraid to trust, it's not weakness. It's your soul saying, "I've trusted before, and it hurt." It's your body trying to protect you from feeling that pain again. But protecting isn't the same as healing, because when all we do is protect, we end up keeping others out. The pain we never named becomes a lens, and love in the present starts to carry the weight of wounds it never caused. Maybe it's time to return to that broken field of trust and plant something new, not to erase what happened, but to give your pain a different future. Because the child you once were doesn't have to be alone anymore. And the adult you are today can begin gently to say, "I see you. I hear you. You don't have to pretend you're okay." This is shadow work too, listening to the roots of our pain with patience, sitting beside our shame without trying to fix it, knowing that behind our anger, there's often a sadness that was never held. Broken trust is not failure, it's a wound, and every wound, when touched with truth, can become a doorway to reconnection. You don't need to remember everything to begin healing, but you do need to stop running from yourself. The trust that feels missing in others might just be the trust you're still learning to give yourself. The trust to look at your whole story, with the scars, with the gaps, with the places that hurt, and still believe you're worthy of love. Sometimes other people feel like dirty mirrors. You look at them and feel anger, disgust, even fear, and you don't know why. It's like something in their behavior touches an old, nameless wound, as if they're carrying a weight that doesn't belong to them. And maybe they are, because sometimes what you see in someone else is just a reflection of what you still haven't learned to accept in yourself. The shadow isn't only darkness, it's everything you pushed away because you thought it wasn't allowed to exist. The desire for control, for example, might show up in someone close to you, and it bothers you. You feel irritated, even repulsed, but maybe that desire is yours. Maybe one day you learned it was wrong to feel that way, so you buried it, and now it comes back, wearing someone else's face. The same thing happens with the fear of rejection. When someone seems too needy, too dependent, you pull away. But deep inside, maybe there's a part of you begging for love and not knowing how to ask. And if you feel like going a little deeper, I carefully prepared a gift for you. It may look small on the outside, but it goes deep. It was made for those quiet moments when you suddenly notice you're here, but not really present. You're breathing, but not really alive. Inside, you won't find answers or fixes, but you might find a way back. Back to the parts of you that got left behind. Back to the gentle voice you stopped listening to. Back to your true self. The one that still remembers who you are. Not a better version of yourself. Not a new version of yourself. Just a whole version of yourself. You'll find the link to your gift right there in the pinned comment. So, if your soul is tired of moving through life without really feeling it, if your soul is tired of waking up and not knowing why, click the link now. The ego rejects what it doesn't understand. And when something inside you is denied, it has to find a way out. Projection becomes that way, an unconscious path for dealing with emotions you can't yet carry on your own. But when you project, you disconnect from who you are, because you start seeing in others what was meant to be seen in yourself. And that creates distance. It traps you in a broken identity, made of parts you abandoned along the way. Depth psychology calls this the ego-shadow relationship. It's a dance that happens all the time, even when you're unaware, and it can become a path toward healing, if you're willing to look. The other person is not your enemy. They're just a messenger, a reminder, a sign that there's something in you longing to be acknowledged. The shadow doesn't scream to punish you. It whispers to help you remember what you've forgotten. Every time someone bothers you deeply, ask a simple question. What part of this is mine? Not to blame yourself, but to embrace yourself, because every projection is a chance to integrate. It's a small doorway between pain and reunion, between who you are and who you're becoming. In the end, the shadow just wants to be seen. It doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to bring you back. And maybe that strange feeling that people are always going to hurt you is just a lost piece of you crying out to come home. There's a part of you that learned to avoid pain by choosing a different pain, a familiar one, a kind of suffering you already know how to carry. It's like your soul saying, I'd rather feel this than risk feeling that. And that's how the pattern begins. You get close to someone, you feel something beautiful starting to grow, and without noticing, you start pulling away. You create conflict where there is none. You read silence as rejection. You shut down before you even open up. And before you know it, you've convinced yourself it's safer to stay alone. This is the invisible pact, the unconscious agreement to repeat what's known. Your mind thinks it's protecting you, and in some ways it is, because opening your heart is a real risk. But so is the pain of never opening it. That pain is just more predictable. So we choose it, again and again, until it becomes a pattern, a cycle that feels like fate, but it's really just defense. And behind that defense, there's a muffled cry, the longing to love, to trust, to be truly seen. That's when the inner conflict rises. On one side, the desire to connect. On the other, the fear of being hurt. These two impulses wrestle inside you every single day. And since no one ever taught you how to reconcile opposites, you live divided. Half of you wants to dive in. The other half is clinging to the edge. And in the meantime, life keeps moving. The chances for real affection keep getting postponed. But later never comes, because the pattern always shows up first. Shadow work means recognizing these secret pacts, not to shame yourself, but to choose something different. Because once you see the pattern clearly, it starts to lose power. When you face the pain you've been repeating, it begins to soften. And maybe for the first time, you realize you don't have to keep paying for protection with loneliness. The psyche is wise, but sometimes it gets confused. It tries to protect you from one abyss and ends up building another. But your soul doesn't just want to survive. It wants to surrender. It wants to truly live. And for that, it needs to believe there's another way beyond repetition. A way that doesn't erase fear, but walks with it. A path where pain isn't a hiding place anymore, but a doorway. Deep down, all this fear of love is just longing for a love you haven't lived yet. A love that begins with you. When you stop running from your own vulnerability. When you listen to fear, but don't let it drive. When you say, I know it hurt before, but I'm here now. And this time, we can try something new. Some people love like they're on watch. They analyze every word, measure every gesture, and read into every silence, believing they're protecting their heart. But deep down, what they're really doing is locking it away. Love becomes a constant evaluation, where any detail might be a threat. And when you live like that, you almost never relax. Because to avoid being hurt, the soul learns to always stay one step ahead, even if it costs you your spontaneity. This is the love of the persona, that part of the psyche Carl Jung described as the mask we wear to survive in the world. In Jungian psychology, the persona plays an important role. It helps us function in society, take on roles, and relate to others. But when we forget it's a mask and start thinking it's our true self, something breaks. Intimacy becomes a risk. Affection feels like a battlefield. And what should be connection turns into constant surveillance. Because behind the persona is the ego, trying to stay in control. But control is a tiring illusion. It may protect, but it doesn't nourish. Emotional vigilance is a form of unconscious compensation. It's the psyche's response when it doesn't know how to handle vulnerability. When trust feels dangerous, the mind tries to predict everything. But this kind of behavior, even if it came from a real need for safety, ends up being a prison. You live trapped in archetypal patterns of self-restriction and mistrust, psychic molds that repeat themselves and keep you from fully experiencing love. And the truth is, your soul doesn't want to stay protected forever. It wants to show itself. It wants to be touched, felt, seen. But the persona doesn't allow that. It's like a psychic shell, built to defend you from the world, but eventually defending you even from what's good. The fear of getting hurt becomes so strong that even tenderness looks like danger. And so, you protect yourself so much, you end up alone. This isolation isn't just around you, it's inside you, between the ego and the psyche, between the part that feels everything and the part that pretends to be strong, between who you are and who you perform. And this conflict needs tenderness, because the persona, after all, was born to protect a part of you that was fragile, that was exposed, that once suffered too much to risk opening again. Jung believed that the path to psychic wholeness begins by recognizing these parts. When you understand the persona is just a role, not your entire soul, surveillance starts to ease. Trust can begin to return, not as naivety, but as choice. The choice to show yourself, even while afraid. To make space for someone else, even without guarantees. Because real love isn't about watching. It's about allowing and slowly trusting that your soul knows how to guide you better than your fear. There's a kind of pain that almost no one sees, but it eats away at you from the inside. It's the moment you realize that in order to be accepted, you had to abandon parts of who you are. Maybe you learned to smile when you wanted to scream, to say yes when you wanted to say no, to please others when deep down you felt anger or exhaustion. That kind of silence isn't peace, it's betrayal. And it didn't come from outside, it came from within, an inner betrayal that began the day you decided your desire was too much, too ugly, too wrong to be shown. In Jungian psychology, this is at the heart of the process called shadow integration. Carl Jung believed that everything we reject in ourselves, our repressed emotions, unlived desires, the traits we disown, doesn't disappear. It hides. It becomes a second skin. a hidden self that stays alive, but suffocated. And that suffocation turns into symptoms: nameless anxiety, chronic fatigue, identity confusion, guilt, shame. All of it coming from the parts of you that want to exist, but were never allowed. Most of the time, that inner denial wasn't born from cruelty, it was survival. You were a child, and children learn fast how to adapt just to keep belonging. So when you sensed that being fully yourself wasn't safe, you started building a more acceptable version of you. But over time, that version became a prison, and your real self, with all its unconscious impulses, depth and sensitivity, became a stranger in your own life. The good news is, the shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to bring you back. And the process of integrating the shadow isn't about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming what was left behind. It begins with listening, with pausing, with asking honest questions like, what have I been silencing? What part of me is asking to return? Slowly, what was once shame becomes a name. What was fear becomes action. And what was a symptom becomes a symbol, a sign that there's life inside you wanting to speak. Carl Jung said that healing begins when we stop being prisoners of what we've repressed, when we choose psychic wholeness, even if it takes pain and courage to get there. Because it's more human to live whole than to keep pretending you're okay while only living with half of yourself. And maybe that's why you feel so deeply, because some part of you is tired of hiding. Integrating the shadow in the end is an act of love. Love for yourself. Love for everything you pushed aside. Love for the parts of you that, even in hiding, never stopped breathing. To trust again isn't about forgetting what hurts. It's not about forcing yourself to believe in someone who hasn't earned it. Real trust comes from a different place, an inner, deep place where opposites stop fighting, where the part of you that's terrified and the part that still dreams of love sit down for the first time to talk. In Jungian psychology, this moment of reconciliation is called the transcendent function. Carl Jung described it as a bridge between psychic opposites, a third path that only appears when we have the patience to hold the tension instead of escaping it. That's where inner alchemy begins, not like magic, but as process, a symbolic transformation that unfolds slowly as the psyche makes space for all of its parts, even the ones that seem to contradict each other. Because you don't have to be only strong or only vulnerable, only skeptical or only open, only guarded or only surrendered. The path of trust isn't about choosing one side. It's about integration. When the ego stops trying to control everything and begins to listen to the soul, fear loses its crown. This inner journey is quiet, but it changes everything. It's when you stop waiting for the world to change and start transforming the way you relate to it. Trust, in this sense, isn't a guarantee about others. It's a decision not to abandon yourself. Even when doubt shows up, it's saying to yourself, even afraid, I stay. Even scarred, I try. And that's when the symbol arrives. Because as Jung said, symbols are the language of the soul. They translate the invisible movements of the psyche into signs the ego can begin to understand. So trust becomes a symbolic process, a reunion with your psychic wholeness, a moment where your body can finally soften, not because everything's fixed, but because there's now space inside you where conflict can live without tearing you apart. Love no longer has to be flawless to be real, and fear no longer needs to be hidden for you to move forward. You don't need to be fully healed to trust again. You just need to be present with all that you are, with your cracks and your light, with your fatigue and your courage. That's the alchemy, turning fear into presence, pain into meaning, wounds into a path. Because in the end, trust doesn't begin with someone else. It begins with you. When your whole psyche finally feels safe to come home. Some pains don't want an explanation. They want to be heard. They didn't come to be fixed, but to open a path. When you stop trying to understand everything with your mind and start feeling with your body, something shifts. The pain stops screaming and begins to speak. It takes shape. It becomes image. And that's when the wound becomes a symbol, a living expression of your psyche, trying to communicate through the symbolic language the soul understands. Carl Jung said that it's in moments of crisis that archetypes appear, in dreams, in images, in intense emotions, all of it pointing toward what the ego still can't see. Jungian psychology teaches us to see these manifestations as messages. A symbolic dream of abandonment may not be about someone else. It might be about the part of you that was left behind. A recurring image of betrayal might be the shadow showing where it still hurts. A threatening figure in a nightmare might be the anger you learned to hide. These are all dream symbols, expressions of the unconscious guiding your inner journey with what it has: images, metaphors, sensations. When a wound is listened to with presence, it becomes an oracle. Not one that tells the future, but one that reveals the present in depth. It points toward the self, that quiet, wise center of the psyche that seeks your wholeness, not your perfection. And sometimes, it's pain itself that pushes you toward that center, because it's only when things fall apart that certain inner doors open. And those doors lead you inward to your soul, your story, the parts of you that were once rejected, but are still there, waiting. The symbolic process isn't fast. It isn't linear. It's like crossing a foggy river. You can't see everything, but you feel the ground under your feet. And every step becomes a meeting, a recognition, a reunion with something that was always yours, but you forgot how to reach it. When pain becomes a symbol, it becomes a bridge. It connects what was divided. And even betrayal can take on a new name. Maybe it's the beginning of coming home to yourself. This isn't about romanticizing pain. It's about honoring that pain speaks, that it carries an ancient wisdom, not from logic, but from the soul. And when you begin to listen with that kind of attention, you don't just heal, you reconnect with what was, with what is, and with what can still become. The wound isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's the first whisper from the self, saying, "Come, I'm here, and it's time to return." And if something I said reminded you of your own story or stirred something inside you, feel free to share it in the comments. I'd really love to hear it. What you have to say matters, not just to me, but maybe to someone else who's going through something similar. Sometimes, putting it into words is already part of the healing. If something inside you still wants to understand yourself, there's another video waiting for you on the screen. And maybe what's in there is exactly what you've been needing to hear. Click it, if that's where your soul is asking to go.